He once said to me, if you're going to work for the business, you better do it because I'll sell it away from you if you're not good enough. My dad looked at me and said, if you think it's a good group to have, do this for the long term. We pulled the trigger. The group ended up flourishing. It was one of the reasons we were able to survive COVID because of the success of the group we bought. A company can survive without profit, but a company cannot survive without cash. I believe the number already today is 25% of Google search is now being done through learning models as opposed to what we consider traditional search. And those results are not driving clicks. Getting married or having kids while running companies, which is not a common combination of factors in one's life. This lesson did come from my dad. Don't ask your staff to do anything you aren't willing to do yourself. Man, looking back, do I wish I'd grown up and matured a little faster. The bars and the clubs, it was fun. I know you're not supposed to look back and change it because then I might not be who I am today.
Welcome to the Sinclair Podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Hey everyone, I got a huge favor to ask. If you're getting value from this podcast, tap that 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple. The more we grow, the more leaders and entrepreneurs we can help. Thank you for being a part of this. Now let's get started.
Joe, thank you so much for making the time to come on the show today. Really appreciate it. We have Josh Singer to thank for that, for the introduction of mutual friendships between the two of us. So really excited to have you here today and share your story.
Appreciate it, Chris. Happy to be here as well. And yeah, thanks, Josh.
Love it. Thanks, Josh. So I want to get right into it. When did you notice that you were wired to be an entrepreneur?
Maybe when I realized I was able to handle some of my dad's pressure growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm only child and a family business, so he once said to me, if you're going to work for the business, you better do it because I'll sell it away from you if you're not good enough. And that was kind of the lesson. Either I was going to make it or I wasn't. And he, if you knew him, you'd believe him that he would sell it out from under me if I wasn't cutting it.
Wow, absolutely, that's amazing. You in our earlier conversation, you coined it as it's a third generation profession versus business. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's right. So in 1929, my grandfather started working for McLean Hunter, the company that McLean's magazine stemmed from the publishing firm McLean Hunter. And my grandfather became a salesman selling advertising in a truck magazine and ended up being a publisher, which is our word for manager. So my dad got into business the way a lot of people do. He called his dad's friends. His father had passed, so my dad called his uncle and his dad's friends. And how do I get a job? I'm
Look me up.
Hook me up. And so through some of those connections, my dad ended up getting a sales job selling advertising for a trucking magazine. But it was a competitive magazine to what his father had worked for a career. And my dad talked to his uncle and asked him specifically, would this move kind of be a slap in the face to Dad's legacy, my grandfather's legacy? And my uncle, or I guess my great uncle, said, this is true, or at least I'm told it's true. Your father had to change his name from Glionna to Glennie in 1929 because McLean Hunter back then wouldn't give an Italian a job. Your dad worked hard, but he didn't have any love for the company. So you've got a good opportunity here, go do it. So my dad, in a sense got hired on his name, but that's where I say Newcom Media today is a second generation business. My father passed it to me. I got good terms. I bought it from him, but I got good terms. But it is a third generation family profession. So since 1929, Glionna men have been selling trucking advertising in Canada.
That's incredible. So tell me about you, growing up, watching your father in business, knowing about, your grandfather, what he did. What was it like being around the family business?
My mother was involved as well. She was our circulation manager. Today you'd call it audience development, almost from day one. And day one was 1987. And being an only child, I'd be sitting around the dinner table and a lot of discussions I recall were about the the getting the company started, the what my mom might have been doing that day, challenges with sales calls, challenges with getting audience subscribers for a new magazine. So yeah, I really did grow up where it was a part of every day, even for me as a kid, because we didn't talk much about, toys or what I was doing. The conversation always seemed to come back at the dinner table to the family business. But I didn't know any different, so it didn't, I didn't have a sibling, so I didn't know that was boring or abnormal. It's what our conversation was around the table. The table was usually pasta and meatballs, so that was about 4 or 5 days a week, if I recall, growing up.
That's great. I mean, great for me because I didn't have that growing up. You probably got sick of it after some point, but hey, Italian food's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I think my dad over embellished a little bit, but the way he tells the story when he got things started is we could only afford meat once a week, excuse me. So it was spaghetti, no meatballs for 4 or 5 days, and then meatballs on Sundays. But my mom kind of told me later in life, yeah, your dad was just trying to teach you hard knocks. It wasn't that rough.
That's great. Speaking of that, what were some of those, maybe not hard knocks, but what were some of those values that you not only saw, but were really embedded into you as a child growing up?
Certainly the ideal of work comes first, and work provides for the family. And if you don't have a steady income, you don't have a safe, secure family. And security, again, being the old tales, being roof over your head and food, where that's all you need. My dad was a war baby. He remembered food lines in Toronto. He remembered food stamps and rations. And again, whether he was embellishing a little bit to make a point or not, but I can't prove anymore. But he did have some of that war baby mentality, which my mom's, to balance with my mom's baby boomer. I got a little bit of both from an upbringing standpoint. But certainly, it was just no matter what work came first. So, for a while with my wife and family, I mean, if there was a phone call and it was a customer, I'd get up from the dinner table and say, work comes first. Like, that was my default. I've since adjusted a little, maybe a lot, and I think society has adjusted as well. No customer today expects us to get up from the dinner table with your family to take a call. But in the 80s and 90s, when I was at the dinner table, it was absolutely not a question. Family came second, business came first.
Yeah, no doubt. What's one thing people get wrong about you, Joe?
About me, the I can have a temper, but I keep that fairly well hidden. But I let a lot slide. I'm more of an agreeable accommodator than I am a firm dictator. And the ego states call it adaptive child. So I do my best at my natural habit to make everybody in a room feel comfortable, even at the sacrifice, maybe not the right word, but giving up something I might prefer so that the group that I'm with would benefit. But if you push me too far, it does fester and I can blow. So that's something not a lot of people know. My wife probably knows. My kids would know.
Well, it sounds like something you've got great awareness of, that you've had to, you harness, right? We all know our default patterns and when we're pushed, what we go to, but an incredible leadership skill that you have to be able to harness that and, sometimes make those decisions, even though it's difficult to maybe go against what your gut is.
Absolutely. And I try to argue, well, I'm emotional, which means I care. That only works a few of the times, but net aggregate, we're moving in the right direction, I think.
That's great. Joe, take me to a risk at the time that was a big, bold, scary move, but one that really paid off for you throughout your career.
Yeah, we've grown through since 2015 through a number of acquisitions. So I mean, any acquisition adds debt. That is risk in some definition. But specifically, there was we acquired a group of financial industry media brands in 2019. I mean, the unknown risk was COVID was only 6 months later. We didn't know that at the time, so that doesn't necessarily count. But I had just agreed to a buyout structure with my father. So I had a couple of years, well, a lot of years where I'd be giving him some consistent cash flow in buying his shares. We had debt already from a couple of acquisitions, and the media brands we were buying, had an office in Toronto, but were actually headquartered in Montreal, which adds a unique element for a Toronto-based company like ours. Although I do have an office of my own in Montreal, but this company's headquarters was Montreal. And I went to my dad at the time and I said, this is a good media group, but I don't think it's the right time. My dad looked at me and said, if you think it's a good group to have, do this for the long term. I said, I'm not going to be able to pay you for a couple of years, Dad. The bank's not going to allow that. And he said, well, I'll be fine. Go do it. Like, oh, that's a double risk, because now not only do I have more bank debt, I've got some real dad debt and dad pressure, which I was
Sure.
trying to offload, right?
Arguably scarier debt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Riskier.
I might have a personal guarantee to the bank. I've got family responsibilities and very difficult Christmas dinners, if you know what I mean. So
Absolutely.
we pulled the trigger. As I said, we didn't know COVID was around the corner. That had its own challenges, but the group ended up flourishing. It was one of the reasons we were able to survive COVID, because of the success of the group we bought. And today, 3 or 4 of my group managers at Newcom are from that acquisition, and it's just proven to be one of a great fit for us. And being in the financial industry is a good industry to be a part of as well.
That's really cool. I mean, not only getting a great company, but you got some great talent with that too that helped to grow the rest of the organization. So
Exactly. They were
give me
much.
this. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to add this group was much further ahead in digital advertising than at the time the current stable of Newcom Media brands. So that was the strategic reason to add it, and that certainly came to fruition.
For probably myself, it's COVID has this PTSD element of like, ugh, I shudder when I think. But give me without spending too much time, give me the short notes of maybe 1 or 2 of the biggest lessons learned for you as a leader coming out of COVID.
Yeah, I had so I mentioned had bank debt coming into COVID, which was healthy debt at the time. We're in the show business as well. About a third of the business is live trade shows. So owning a trade show for the meeting and event industry in COVID is one of the great ironies I can laugh about now. But we were underwater would be an understatement, with live events being canceled for basically 2.5 years, having the debt. So cash was a major problem. And as an entrepreneur or taking over a family business, I'm a sales guy. So I go out and sell, revenue comes in, we've got a decent business model. At the end of the year, we know things are going to work out. But I was never trained, either by my dad and certainly not by education, on balance sheets, cash flow. I know how to manage a P&L statement for my business, well, I'll say, but I don't understand accounting terms and again, balance sheet, cash flow, and those aspects of the financial realities of a business. Never had to until I had to. So one of the lessons is absolutely around cash flow and profit, and the difference between cash in the bank and bottom line profit and what you pay tax on. So the adage, and I didn't make it up, but I was told it, and it certainly rings true. A company can survive without profit, but a company cannot survive without cash. And once I wrap my head around that, and working with my CFO and our accounting advisors throughout COVID, and really had an understanding of that aspect, different from publishing a good quality magazine or producing a good quality trade show. That financial knowledge absolutely has benefited me getting through it, but also now much better manager. It's trying to think of the right words. A lot more detailed and a lot better understanding of all of the aspects of being a CEO, not just the sales and business development, which is what I probably better at.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think probably a lot of entrepreneurs can, where you kind of do the thing. You're probably good at sales and attracting people, and all of a sudden there's some things that you get forced into learning that you all of a sudden wake up one day and realize, okay, I got to figure this out now, or get some really good people around me that can figure that out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just to put some context to size of organization and number of people, either pre or where you are now. I mean, again, you're not a small company. You've got a large amount of staff and doing a lot of revenue.
Yeah, we're 100 people. We got headquartered in Etobicoke, just west of Toronto City Centre, and about 85 people in Toronto, and an office with 12, 15 people in Montreal. We were only 28 people in 2014, and so as we talk about the acquisitions, so 100 people now. I think the biggest we ever got was 140 after a few acquisitions came at the same time. Yeah, 25 million top line revenue, good, decent, healthy business. And as of a few months ago, no debt. So that was one of the big goals that coming out of COVID was important to me. I used the air quotes healthy debt before. Another one of the lessons, to go back to that question, debt can be useful. Debt can help you grow. I'm not against the concept, but going through what we did, living life debt-free is a freeing experience, that I can say with certainty.
I think the answer is yes, but would you agree that debt all comes down to just comfort level of where you want to be and what you're comfortable with holding?
Absolutely. But where I got in trouble, and where anybody can get in trouble, is your comfort level on Tuesday might change drastically by the next Tuesday or the next Monday if things change. Tariff announcements. Well, a lot of people with debt yesterday were not very happy after tariffs were announced. We don't have to rehash live events and COVID. That's a once in a generational thing. But you never know. Much simpler stories. You never know when some of your partners, things don't go well, and all of a sudden your healthy debt is at risk. So, yeah, your comfort level is before you get into debt. But once you're in it, there's still a lot of factors outside of your control. Don't want to. Not always that doomsday scenario, but if you can self-fund and keep debt at a minimum, that's a great, very safe way to live. If you have a higher risk tolerance and want to gamble, people use phrases like "take chips off the table." Well, that's also a reference to gambling. So if you feel that way about if you feel that way about business, go for it. It's a free market. I support it. And I'm not here saying I will never do another acquisition with debt financing. But I do want to live a couple of years of my life without having that risk whatsoever. So that's the phase I'm in right now.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to enjoy the spot that you've created for yourself, right?
That's it.
That's true. I mean, you make such a great point. I think so many people, you come out of COVID and there's all of a sudden a couple good years, and then, like you said, no one knows what's around the corner, and we're living a prime example of that right now with, some big uncertainty around, geopolitical tariffs, AI. There's a lot of big things happening. So I think it's a really good reminder and point for people to look at before some of those bigger, riskier moves are made.
Absolutely. And every industry is different, of course. I know mine, I think, pretty well. Don't know many others. So, you mentioned AI, just other risks or threats to an industry. There's been a lot of merger and acquisition in publishing, in B2B media. Data is a word that gets used a lot when discussing media companies. But it's hard. Interest rates have gone up, so private equity firms owe more on their debt. How are they going to pay that off? Well, going to have to make some cuts if revenue is also declining, and that is the case for a lot of media companies. So, the strength of media brands 10 years ago, I'd argue, isn't the same as it is today. And as a lifelong publisher, third generation publisher, that makes me sad. So, if we can do well in our little nook and cranny with the markets we're in Canada, and keep strong brands sustainable, there is a sense of pride in that as well.
What do you see for the future of media in Canada, say the next 5 to 10 years? Your perspective.
Yeah, so Newcom is specifically trade media, business to business media. And so my answer for my business is probably a little different than it would be if we're talking about, newspaper consumer media, or, where are kids getting their news? Well, Snapchat, Reddit, and TikTok. So to answer the question specifically for my business, professional services, dentists, financial advisors, trucking company owners are some of the markets we serve. There is still, even for younger generations, an understanding that industry-specific information comes best from industry-specific media sources. But what we're going to have to do to really adjust, we're printing on our magazines on paper. Our magazines where we still print, that's what I was trying to say, are only probably less than half of our media brands now. And that's been going on for a decade, and we have to adjust where LinkedIn becomes a platform where we are serving our media and creating a network on LinkedIn. So it's still our original content, but we're going to another platform to be in front of our audience. Having trade shows is a nice, rounds out our media offerings nicely for our industries. But the current challenge right now, funny enough, had a meeting this morning where this was the topic du jour, is you mentioned AI, Chris, and Chat GPT is one example, but learning models in general. I believe the number already today is 25% of Google search is now being done through learning models as opposed to what we consider traditional search.
Wow.
And those results are not driving clicks to my sites or any sites. The entire point of the results that ChatGPT shows us is that you stay within their ecosystem, and the bots are so good at amalgamating the data and presenting it back to us that the user doesn't have to go to the original source site. So big publishers, New York Times, Hearst Publishing, those types of brand names, they're working directly with the Chat GPTs of the world. But I'm humble enough to know my place in the world. Small little B2B company in Canada, Chat GPT is not looking to sign me up as a content partner. So, that right now is absolutely our biggest risk and not even upcoming, current challenge. How do we replace the traffic coming to our site from Google search now that ChatGPT and others are going to eliminate a high percent of that? So that's the number one challenge today based on change in our industry and directly media.
Knowing some of those numbers, Joe, do you see potential for, let's say, some of the traditional items? I mean, you mentioned about print, like print, I think, and you could tell me better, but had a bit of a resurgence in COVID. There was more tactical touch feel. Trade shows, as soon as we were able to, people exploded, and there was a massive excitement of getting together again. Is there potential for those two mediums and others like that, where it's that still human connection piece to scale again?
Short answer, yes. The hesitation or the caveat is it really is dependent on the market, the demographic. Books, tangibly reading a book, going outside to read a book. Most people, even younger generation, if you give them the option, there is something about a book that is just nice to feel and to read. When I say to smell, my kids think I'm weird, but there's something nice about the smell of a book too.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're seeing that with all age brackets. For our industry, why there's a caveat is while print is still valued, some of our markets where we do print, it's entirely based on demographic of the readership. So trucking industry and the dental industry, for example, still middle-aged male is a heavy demographic, and middle-aged male as a demographic wants something tangible. Our meeting and event industry, our retail industry, younger female demographic, more likely to want digital media as just a demographic statistic, let's call it. So in those markets, we're live event focused and digital media focused. Dental and trucking, we still have print. Right now, however, University of Toronto School of Dentistry I believe the number is 60% female and mostly new Canadian, not white as a demographic. So our delivery mechanism has to change quickly, even in dentistry, because we follow the demographic trends period. There's no way around it for us. So we do stay on top of that as closely as we can. To get specific to your question, we are providing guidebooks or handbooks or supplements that an advertiser would want to sponsor and will deliver to our audience. But the advertiser will not have our advertisers collectively will not have a large enough print budget for us to sustain print, even if a market like trucking, people still want it. So there is that XY axis in Economics 101. There comes a point where even though the readers might still want print, the advertisers have said, look, it's time to go digital only. So that for our industry is what we kind of try to keep our eyes on and have to manage. But yeah, old dentists still reading print, and we're happy to print for another half decade if they want it and the advertisers support it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, call me old school, but I love a book. I do not read ebooks. I'll do some podcasts and audiobooks, but I agree. It has a smell. I can write on it. I can flag it. There's something about it.
Exactly.
Share with me, if you don't mind, your experience with YPO. So Young Presidents Organization. What is YPO for those that don't know, and how's it helped you in both a professional and personal standpoint?
Yeah, so Young Presidents Organization, we inside joke with members. We got to work on that name because it doesn't.
Is it holding strong and representing?
Yeah, I mean the name itself doesn't necessarily ring humility, but it is exactly who we are. We are presidents, CEOs of organizations, and we are under 45 years old when we first joined. I've been a member 8 years now, so I think I was 36 or 7 when I joined. And it is a really great network of like-minded individuals and similarly aged, and that's why the why is important for this organization, because we're getting married or having kids while running companies, which is not a common combination of factors in one's life, and so the challenges that we go through are quite unique. And so having a peer group of people going through the same issues is very helpful. And for me, a tight group of 7, 8 individuals in the Toronto area. We meet monthly. We cry, we laugh. Sometimes a meeting is entirely about dealing with aging parents. Sometimes it's about personnel issues at work. For a while, it was about office policy. What are we going to do coming back to the office? So we'll talk about anything and everything in a confidential environment, and again with people who are of similar age. And we know it doesn't even have to be stated, but I can be talking about a business issue, and simultaneously everybody knows I've got teenage girls at home and an aging parent issue. So without even stating it, we all have these similar challenges happening all the time for all of us, and so that collection of people is why it's a special organization to be a part of, to have that peer review. And yeah, then some of the other aspects. There's some great family events. I've done father-daughter events, one-on-one with 20 other, one-on-one with one of my girls, 20 other dads and their daughters meet up, and
that's awesome.
Whitewater rafting. There's some counseling. Sharing challenges with adolescent girls, for example, just another example of how getting people in similar situations together can really provide some exposure to other ways of handling challenges, and sometimes just knowing you're not alone is useful on its own right.
But just to say that, just the understanding that, hey, there's a lot of people going through something similar, or the problem that I thought, I'm not YPO, but EO is a similar format.
Right.
Yeah, the problem I went into today realized, hey, I'm not alone, and other people are struggling, if not with other issues or bigger issues too. So that empathy really helps.
Absolutely, it does.
And from a metric standpoint, for those maybe interested in the YPO, is it's a revenue and a number of employees as a benchmark to get in? Do you have those numbers offhand?
I'll say I think these are the numbers offhand. If I'm off by a bit,
we won't quote you.
Yeah, don't take this to Final Jeopardy.
Yeah.
It's I believe it's 20 million top line revenue is one of the revenue thresholds. Now there are a lot of companies that the nature of the company top line revenue isn't such a strong metric, so they have a valuation category as opposed to using revenue. And then number of employees as well is something, and as you say, EO is a great organization and smaller, entrepreneurial, just getting started. And a lot of people from EO come into YPO as the organization expands. But there's also very large companies where people feel more comfortable in EO. I don't know that one is, I certainly would say one is a better or not. There's some nuances that are a little different. And then even in YPO, I mean, there's billion-dollar companies and there are some groups where they say, hey, a billion-dollar company and a $25 million company, we're too different to be in the same peer group. So some of these peer groups, or we call them forums, actually have their own thresholds so that you put billion-dollar companies together because there's the needs and experiences of a $25 million company doesn't relate well enough to a billion, as an example.
Yeah, finding out where the similarities are and shared experiences.
Right.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing. Joe, going back in your time or even now, who have been or are the most influential mentors in your career?
Yeah, there's been a couple. I mean, it's cliche, but it's the truth. I mean, certainly my father has been one. Growing up in, hearing about his business as we went through earlier, then coming into the business and, having him be my trainer, mentor, boss, whatever words you want to use, all three at the same time. No doubt about it, the father figure in a family business, it could be a mother figure in a different business, but for me it was the father figure in my business. There's another publisher, owner of a publishing company. His name is Mike Fredericks. His company is Annex Business Media. They're the largest B2B media company in Canada. Annex and Newcom have done some acquisitions together over the years, and Mike had a lot of experience in M&A before Newcom, and my dad and I started getting involved with acquiring other companies. So when we did our first deal jointly, Mike was at the time and still is a mentor of mine, and really had me understanding the numbers from an M&A standpoint, how he integrated companies, the process he took, the time he took to learn about the businesses he had bought. I would not have been successful at acquisitions without the sage advice of call my Uncle Mike Fredericks at Annex Media.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. What part of your work lights you up the most? What's the thing that you do? And it's probably, my assumption is it's the thing you do better than anyone else and the thing you just love doing. What is that for you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's so easy of an answer. I was just talking about it yesterday. It is selling. It's being on the road. It's the business development side of a business. You use the word vulnerable. I am naturally vulnerable. I don't mind sharing embarrassing stories about myself. It's my natural. I'm natural at doing that. It's not something I force to do, and it's not a tactic or a trick. What I learned, this wasn't on purpose, but as a salesman, green salesman, just dialing for dollars, you call 100 people, you get 10 people on the phone, maybe you get one meeting. But in that meeting, I would just be myself, and I would be a little self-deprecating, make the person laugh.
That's great.
As I say, it wasn't a trick, it was me being me. But what I learned is, when you're a little bit vulnerable, it really brings down the barriers. It really makes the person across from you comfortable. And that personality trait of mine, I think, has helped me become a successful salesman. When you naturally and genuinely show vulnerability, people are comfortable being around you, forming a relationship with you, and then having good products to sell does help. You have a good relationship and a good product, it's a little easier to make the sale at that point. So that process, and then the victory of, or the feeling of success, the victory when you get a sale, I don't care if it's $100 or $100,000, just getting the win is such a rush.
Closing the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, from a vulnerability standpoint, that's, I think most would agree this is a trait that's come to light the last maybe decade or two versus 50 years ago. Was this a trait your father had?
No.
So where'd you get it from?
Well, I don't have a psychiatrist, but say my psychiatrist would tell you that it came from protecting myself from two Type A parent personalities at home.
That's great. I love you can the humor in it too.
Yeah, there is absolutely no obvious DNA connection to me having the personality I have. Love my parents. They were, when I say volatile, not bad volatile, but they were high energy. Both had to be right,
Yeah.
and so my perhaps my personality is a little bit of a defense mechanism. But no, I think too when there is a bit of a learned aspect to it. I mean, even people who have a brick wall for a personality, I do believe people can learn to go outside of your natural tendencies a bit. And the more you do it, you practice it, the easier it becomes. So, I don't come into a new relationship and tell the most embarrassing thing about my life.
Share your
But
deep dark secrets.
yeah, I mean, it's not that level of vulnerability, but the when you're vulnerable once and you realize the feedback is not negative, maybe it's neutral, but maybe it's positive, then you're a little more comfortable the next relationship to be vulnerable again. It's not always a great tactic. As I said, it's not. I don't do it as a tactic, but it doesn't always work out as a great relationship builder. You can get taken advantage of. You can. I don't know that I win a lot of negotiations as if I. What's the right way to word this? I probably don't win as many negotiations as I could because I start vulnerable and I'm willing to give a little bit. But that's isolating specific examples. If I look at 10 negotiations or 100 negotiations, I am in general, on the right side of business success moving forward. So, yeah, there's just being vulnerable, being proven by the response I get that it's okay, allowed me to do it a little more. And I just think it becomes, a natural trait becomes more of your habit because it's been successful.
That's awesome. I think it's one of the most incredible leadership qualities. I admire that in individuals, yourself included. I picked that up in 30 seconds in our conversation when we first met. So I would imagine that you win way more than not winning because of that.
Yeah, and don't want to make that sound too egotistical, but yeah, I'm a good salesman.
I love it. Well, and I think winning, I would say, in the context of relationships too, and building your team and building trust, because that's what that does, right? It creates that safety, security, that openness to say, hey, I'm willing to share and be me, and then in turn, people can do the same. We're all human. We're all fully flawed and not perfect, and that's okay.
Absolutely, and it's important to look at. I feel to look at the aggregate. I'll use that word quite a lot in the last few years because it's life is moving forward and moving backwards, and as long as you're moving forwards more than you're moving backwards, I think that's what we should be proud of. If you're trying never to move backwards, man, you're not doing something right, in my experience. So yeah, have I blown up relationships when accidentally or because I made a misstep? Absolutely. Do I think if people were able to put that memory behind them and give me another chance, they'd see that in the aggregate I'm moving forward? I think they would. But to your point, Chris, no. Sometimes you flub and you can't make up, and not much you can do about that at times.
It's part of being human.
Absolutely.
How does your team talk about you when you're not in the room?
They would say, holy shit, I wish he would involve me more. I wish he would put what's in his head down on paper. And I wish he would tell me what I need to do about the day before he's asking me to do it.
Joe, you move fast.
I don't even know that I move fast, but I definitely don't keep my team involved as much as I should be. My EA, God love her, but man, do I make her life difficult.
I love the vulnerability in it. Speaking of,
Yeah, but you can tell I've had to explain that one before. No, I think the positives would certainly be they believe that they believe in the direction I'm headed. From a business standpoint, we certainly do right by our customer and our staff. Again, missteps have been made, but absolutely, by and large, people working for me believe they're treated well, and especially in their time of need, it's one of the things I believe is most important. And then the respect that we have for the industries we serve, and the in respect, a better word to use is the investment we make in our media brands, is such that my staff at Newcom, even if I'm having a bad day or I don't respond the way they thought I might, at the end of the day, everybody working on any of our media brands knows that we are investing to have the best media brand in that market in Canada. Like, that is the goal every day. And so if I'm tough one day, if I make a mistake one day, if we do go in the wrong direction one day, we can always fall back on, okay, those mistakes were made, but we have the best trucking magazine in Canada, and that didn't change because it was a mistake.
The goal stays the same.
That's the consistency where, even, as I said, you can make mistakes when you can fall back on the top product. Don't try to make more mistakes, but
yeah, learn from them. But
that's one of the things that we can fall back on, and that's not my business model. That goes back to all the way to McLean Hunter. Again, my grandfather in the 30s, the original B2B business model that they had is what we, in a very simple way, still live with today.
I love that. I want to go back about 15 plus years. You're going to have to probably correct my story, but you were, I want to say, shipped off to northern Quebec early in your career. Maybe not your most exciting move, but it panned out really well for you.
That's
Walk me
right.
through that.
That's right. So this is some of the funny joys of a family business, and your dad being the patriarch who can tell you what to do no matter what.
Sure.
So we had launched a Quebec-based French language trucking magazine, and it's 25 years ago now. 20 years ago now that magazine launched. Great audience. We invested just like we did for our English national magazine. We had we believe the best, or one of the top journalists in Quebec. And a couple, 2-3 years into this, just not getting the advertisers. And I remember my dad, proverbially pulling his hair out. We've got a great product. We're not making any money. We're not making any headway in market share. We're at an industry, the Quebec Trucking Association golf tournament in 2006, something like that. And we're golfing with a few customers. I'll never forget who they are. Roger and Jean from Ultramar, the oil company, lubricant manufacturer.
Yeah.
And they were good friends of my dad's, and business friends. And my dad's giving him the spiel, pulling his hair out. We got this great product, and Roger looks at my dad and says, "Jim, you're in Toronto. This is Quebec. You've got to do something that shows us that you're invested in us, not just you're in Toronto and you think you have a good product." My dad says, "Oh, that makes sense. What do you have in mind?" Roger looks at me. Roger looks at his colleague Jean. Roger looks at my dad and says, "You need to have senior management move to Montreal." I didn't really pick up on what that meant.
Behind you? Yeah.
Right? So, honest to God, I didn't really pick up on entirely what that meant at the time. And that tournament's always beginning of July. So, only a few weeks later, sometime in the summer of 2000, and it would be 2006, I was young, I was going out a lot, so I'm talking Sunday morning. I probably hadn't even gone to bed yet. My dad knocked on my door at 7 a.m., says, "I got to talk to you, then you can go back to sleep." I'm like, "Oh, God, what is it?" Sits me down in his office at home. I was still living at home, and he says, "What would you think about moving to Quebec next year to take over Newcom Media Quebec for us, establish an office, and run this magazine?" And I just looked at him. I said, "You're not asking me, are you?" He said, "No. And by the way, you're enrolled at l'École de langue de Chicoutimi starting in January. So that's the language school of Chicoutimi.
Amazing.
And for any of your listeners who are not familiar with where Chicoutimi is on a map, most people aren't. It's 2.5 hours north of Quebec City through the provincial park. And I was going there in the winter time. So
Oh my gosh.
4 months, minus 30 for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks in a row at one point. I mean, nobody speaks English there. I mean, a few people do, but I mean, the people do not really speak English, and that's the whole point. So this language
Sure.
course, I mean, students take it, but also politicians and business people who are in need, well, obviously in Canada for political reasons, a lot of people need to speak French if you want to be federally political. So anyway, I took this language program. That was January of 2007, and then June that year was living in Montreal. And as you say, sometimes things work out. So the magazine started to take off because we'd shown the province the right support and the right respect.
Yeah.
But I should say, much more important than that, I met my now wife. Our first daughter was born in Montreal, and now proud dad of 3 girls and a beautiful French-Canadian wife. And none of that would have happened had my dad not told me I was moving to Quebec to open an office for us there.
I love it. Such a beautiful story. How old are your girls?
14, 13, and 8.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Biggest lesson having kids taught you as an entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur, that's a good twist to a question. You know, a lot of little things don't matter, I think would be the answer. A lot of little things don't matter. One thing matters, your family. And yes, you have to provide for them. That lesson is still relevant. But my respect for, one, my own mom or my own parents once I had kids, quadrupled. I'm
Oh
sure
yeah,
that's what every new parent feels.
for sure.
But my respect for the challenges, the needs of employees. There's so many people in any company that have just tough shit going on, for lack of a better way to phrase it, whether that's with their own parents, their own kids, their own family. And so having kids certainly softens you in a way and gives you a perspective and an understanding of really what is important. And I think it's made me a better manager because it's tied into being an entrepreneur. Because I know what other people are going through, even if they're not admitting it. Got some people in the office right now who are new parents. I can sit there and be okay with their lack of attention, their fatigue, and a bit of not their best work for a few months because I've been there. What are you going to do? Give somebody shit for not sleeping when their kid's 2 weeks old, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. The empathy meter goes way up once you've experienced that, and you, it doesn't matter what anyone can tell you before that. You have to experience that to realize.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's this lesson did come from my dad. Don't ask your staff to do anything you aren't willing to do yourself, and you certainly try not to have people do something you haven't done yourself if it's in your own bucket. Having needed some extra time off, we are now a very flexible company when it comes to personnel matters outside of the office. Because I want the extra day off, and I know I own the company and I can do it if I want to, but I kind of don't feel that's the right way to approach it. So if I'm taking an extra day off and my family needs it, my staff get the same luxury as well.
Awesome leadership. I love it. What's one thing 10, 15 years ago that you would go back and tell young Joe? Maybe around the time you're headed out to Quebec. What's one piece of advice or something you'd say to yourself at that point?
It all worked out. I ended up meeting my wife through a group of friends. I'll call them like the party phase of life. So it did all work out.
Yeah.
Man, looking back, do I wish I'd grown up and matured a little faster. The bars and the clubs. It was fun. I know you're not supposed to look back and change it because then I might not be who I am today. But there's opportunities in university, the opportunity to learn. Now that we're, when I say we, mid 40s, middle age. Once we're a little wiser, you realize the missed opportunities from the past. I guess that's where the phrase comes from. Youth is wasted on the young. So that's where
Very
I
cool.
wouldn't even call it regret, Chris. But it is. I do look back at some risky situations where I'm like, holy shit, that was close, and I look back at some missed opportunities because I was having a little too much fun. So that might be a cliche one, but it really does. It really is the one that has me thinking about things I would change if I could.
Yeah. What's the one thing you're working on right now? Project, big strategy, something that you're super pumped about.
The easy answer for that too, because there is one thing. We have a great reputation in the Canadian market with our media brands, and there's a pretty big market south of us, despite current political sentiment and some fractured relationships. We are looking south to launch our media brands in the U.S. So that's something that we are currently in the R&D mode and looking to launch in 2026.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Last and most important, I would say, is how do we find you and your work?
From a physical location or email, you mean?
Whatever.
Or
I mean, we can track you on LinkedIn, but yeah, it's a website. How do people
yeah,
go, find out more?
or if you find me at work, you might find me tired. But
Or how do we track you down now?
yeah, so you
Yeah.
track me down, and actually, I don't know if it's good or bad, but transparent with contact information. So joe@newcom.ca is my email address, and I'm happy to have anybody give me a shout. Our office is in Etobicoke. The corporate website is newcom.ca. But we've got 20 brand websites, and our time and attention go to the brand websites themselves. So I kind of tell people it doesn't matter to me if anybody in the trucking industry knows who Newcom is, but I need everybody in the trucking industry to know what trucknews.com is. So
Makes sense.
different. Our brand is the media brand in the industry is much more important than what Newcom is or Joe Glionna is. But yeah, if you want to find the corporate brand, it's newcom.ca, and you can reach me at joe@newcom.ca. You will find me on LinkedIn. You won't find me on any other social sites, though.
That's awesome. Joe, thank you so much. Amazing story. Incredible experiences shared. You're a wise leader, I would say, well beyond your years, and I really appreciate you making the time to come on today. Thank you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Chris. Thanks for thinking I was appropriate or good enough to give the time to on your podcast. And again, thanks to Josh Singer for introducing us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. We'll be in touch soon.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot, Chris.